All right, Westworld episode 4 breakdown. Huge episode. We've been teasing it, and it's not like we discovered this, but we had heard, you had seen people who had watched some of the episodes already, that this was the episode. Everything ties together, and we go from these broken storylines of one at a time serial storytelling to everyone all together at once, and the story converges. It happened. So we continue to not be lied to at all. We are given everything I think we want. And I say it each week, our questions are answered, and then more open up. It's not like we're juggling a million things. And we'll get into the episode quick here, but very quick thoughts on, did you like it? I personally loved it. I'll just leave it at that.
This was my first one where I was pretty confused for the first half. I didn't really understand what was happening for, I would say, the first 20, 25 minutes. It was. I started to feel a cold takes exposed coming for me, as I've been saying, that like everything's pretty straightforward. You just know what you're supposed to know, and you don't know what you're not supposed to know. And this one was the first one where I felt pretty lost. But once the switch flipped, as Drake would say, once I flipped the switch, I was all in. So first half, I will give like a C. Second half, A.
I actually like this episode quite a bit, at least compared to last episode. I think it was relatively straightforward. I agree with you in the beginning. It was a little bit confusing. I think that was obviously like with purpose, kind of like leading into the switch up at the end. So, all in all, it's definitely one of my more favorite episodes of the season so far.
I don't like when they start confusing, though, because even if it was intentional, it almost makes you like kind of give up on the rest of it, where you're like luckily it pulled you back in, but there was definitely like a moment where I just kind of relaxed and was just like basically drowned in the confusion and accepted my fate as like, I'm just not gonna know what's happening.
Treading water. No, I get that feeling. That was me last episode a little bit.
It gives you kind of like a whoa vibe. You're like, uh-oh. I was getting ready to Google and pause. I was like, all right, this could be one of those pause episodes. Like Watchmen had a couple of those. You get that with some series here and there. I was like, I might be looking some stuff up, but it fell into line, and I think I kind of got that we were looking at some flashbacks, maybe some flash forwards. So let's just break it down. The episode title is The Mother of Exiles, which apparently, I won't take credit for this, but I can't credit one place because everyone but me figured it out. It's apparently another name for the Statue of Liberty. I didn't know that, which Dolores, I guess, is the Mother of Exiles because she's trying to liberate the hosts. So cool little nod there.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
And liberate humans from life.
Yeah, right, yeah. So here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to go there were 4 sets of character duos in this episode. We're going to go by each one up until the big reveal, and then we'll talk about the big reveal all at once. First up, William and Charlotte. He's in like a trashed house. We don't really know where he is at first because remember the last time we saw him, he looked to be in like a very distant future. We don't see that. We don't get any of that. That's worth noting. Might see it later, may not even see it this year. Who knows? But he's in a trashed house. He's very fucking – he's kind of going crazy. He sees a hallucination of his daughter who he killed. She has, like, blood coming out of her like she got shot, and she's screaming, and then she's calm. It's really messed up. Like, you can tell he's really losing it. Tons of mirrors, tons of glass. There's a whole thing about blood and water dripping from the ceiling and, like, a bathtub bursting. His wife died in a bathtub after reading his file about Delos and all that. So, again, he's off his rocker at this point. He doesn't really know who he is, where he is, if he's real, who is real. But then Charlotte shows up, needs his help. She talks about the SERAC Delos takeover. That's where you're like, okay, you're like, this is what's happening now. You don't really know what's happening at first. You're like, he's going nuts, but this is really happening in the timeline of stuff that we've watched. And she mentions like, look, I need your help. Bunch of, business lingo and jargon, takeovers. We got a board seat, shares, stock. We need
turning
money.
Into like a Succession episode, basically.
Yeah. We need money to buy it up and become private. Yeah, essentially. But she does make one kind of cool comment, which I liked, and you visually saw it throughout the episode. Charlotte says to William, come back to who you were. And if you notice, at that moment, he was in all white. And then later on, when he came back, and he was like all dressed up and shaved and haircut, he was back to being the man in black. He was in all black. So I thought that was a very cool visual cue of like, come back to who you were. You're currently the man in white. And then he became the man in black by the end of the episode. So I thought that was pretty neat. This is like a
kind of a weird move, I thought, considering the end game was to prove that he's crazy. So she's like, here, clean yourself up so you look super presentable so I can prove you're crazy. It's like, why not literally just lead him outside, gun in hand, in his bathrobe, unshaven? Pretty sure they would have taken him like that.
Exactly. I like how we just got like an Aaron Sorkin walk-in talk with John just now.
That was pretty cool.
That's actually a very good point. I hadn't thought about that. Why would you want someone who like is in a suit and looking good? It's much easier to be like, hey, this guy walking around on glass barefoot
with
is
a fucking
insane.
Desert Eagle in his hand. Like, yeah, it's probably that's the crazy guy.
Yeah. So we'll go back to him, but there's one other thing that happens. She does help, and I got to get the name of the person on Twitter I saw because I didn't pick it up. I sent it to John late last night. She does help shave William. Charlotte's like, oh, let me help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get back to that. That was apparently a major visual cue that I whiffed on, but then when you see it, you're like, oh, shit. That makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, I definitely did not pick up on that.
We'll get back to that later on. We go to theories and Easter eggs and all that stuff. Okay, so from William and Charlotte, pretty simple. We move on to their whole thing up until the big reveal is they're trying to get William buttoned up, ready to go for a meeting to make sure they can avoid this SERAC takeover. All right, Bernard and Ashley. You haven't seen Bernard and Ashley in a while. We see a bit of a flashback to the kind of the rebirth, right? Bernard's rebirth at the hands of Dolores. He's in his old house too. They show this old home of his. I've seen a couple websites, a couple other YouTube breakdowns. I think Story was one of them. They get really into like the biblical stuff. There's like crosses and stuff, like a rebirth type thing. I think that's a pretty good Easter egg for those to pick up on that. Yeah, it's
not his host home.
Yeah, it's for the human side of him, Arnold, right? So Bernard, he's now in the present day. They move on from that flashback. He's in Victorville, California. Shout out to Tim Heidecker's On Cinema, which takes place there. If you get that reference, big thumbs up. He's hiding out in Victorville, California. You see some like some rockets landing, so you kind of get that hint that like, all right, we're very much like where we are in the season's timeline with like a future world, rockets, spaceships.
There's the Elon Musk rocket too, the one that lands.
Yeah. So he's with Ashley. They're in a motel. Really shitty motel. Ashley kind of gives him shit for it. He goes, "This place sucks. I'd rather be in that murder town that we used to be in."
Yeah.
He brings him a sick. He's talking about like how he doesn't have the resources to fix his shoulder or whatever, but he's saving it for important things, and it kind of says it as he's giving a 6-pack of beer, which I thought was a pretty funny comment.
The Ashley's like my favorite character. That line, it wasn't Murder Town, it was Murder Theme Park.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, there aren't a lot of laugh out loud moments in Westworld, but that one was fucking tremendous.
He's the down at home blue collar host. I love him. Love him to death.
And he, well, we'll get to him again later on when he interacts with Dolores, but he's the most, I think, relatable host because he has this very, very human side to him, and he's witty. And the banter with him and Bernard is pretty great. So I think, he's definitely a favorite of mine. Bernard is making another button, one of his sicko mode buttons, but this time it's to turn off Liam, he says. So did this part throw you for a loop for a second?
How so?
I didn't know, because so it didn't for me, but I could see, and they ended up explaining it, and that's the thing with Westworld, always wait for the explanation. But they were talking about like turning off Liam, and I was like, well, wait a second, Liam's not a host. And so I figured like they just don't know. They assume that Dolores made Liam a host. Her I guess at this point, ex-boyfriend, because Liam thinks she's not there anymore. I think she's dead.
By the way, they're quite liberal with boyfriend and girlfriend. They went out like twice.
Literally 2 times.
Went to a crazy party, and then she got beat up in his apartment.
I did like the "Hello Lover" line though. That was way more apt than the ex-boyfriend line.
Yeah. So they so they're creating this button. They're going to go find Liam because they think they can control Liam. Bernard tests it on Ashley again. He's like, "Fuck off! Like you making me stop." He's like, "I hope this works." So their goal, all right, Bernard and Ashley, they know all about Liam. They tease there. Bernard teased on the beach of Westworld that when he plugged in online, he found all the information about who Dolores was going after, looking up, and he noted like she took a liking to this gentleman. He held up like his thin iPad thing, and it showed Liam. So he knows about Liam. They're going to find Liam and try to stop Liam or try to take control of him because they think he's a host, that Dolores turned him into a host. Speaking of Dolores, Caleb and Dolores, they open up. They're trying on suits in like this dressing room mirror thing. Very cool.
Cyber Men's Warehouse.
It is. It's
20 suits for one.
It is a very cool piece of technology. I actually rewound just to see it again. I'm like, that was pretty neat. I like that. This is the coolest piece of tech I think I've seen. So they're dressing up. They're trying to get them all dressed up to go in and basically pull off a bank heist. They need to act as somebody, a part of the team that controls the financials of Liam Dempsey. We see how they're able to access them. Martin, who Liam does not know is a host. Dolores has used Martin to take over the actual Martin. He basically forces him to give him his key, his fingerprint, to access all his money, all his accounts. So that's the first piece. The second piece, Dolores beats the shit out of a finance bro who basically controls all of Liam's accounts, Liam's funds, and she injects that blood. She takes some of his blood and injects it into Caleb, and Caleb now has, I think, 20 minutes to kind of use that blood to be another person, which is what it seems as though Dolores has done to be this Laura Espin person, right? She's injected herself with other people's blood. We see this the rest of the episode. So now that's what Caleb does to impersonate someone and have access to withdraw and clear funds out of Liam's account.
Laura Espin still matters. Something has.
You're obsessed
There's no
with this
reason
Ukrainian
to
chick.
keep talking about this girl's name.
So I don't know if we ever ended up discussing this, but they said she's like Russian or Ukraine, right?
Ukrainian, yeah.
Ukrainian. I do know that there are. I don't know if it's Russian or Ukrainian or what the language is, but when Caleb and Kid Cudi, they have those flashbacks. So when he dies, Francis, the Kid Cudi character, dies.
Mm-hmm.
There is either Russian or Ukrainian. There is a language on the wall that's being written, and I do think we get a flashback to that moment in the next episode. So you may be right. Like, I don't rule it out.
It just doesn't make sense to keep talking about her if she doesn't matter. Like we don't need to like even the mortician. She's like, oh, I sold her Laura Espin's blood. Why are you going by? Like, why do you know who the specific bag of blood was?
The name, right? The name, it makes it feel like it's more important than it is. Because they would have said, I just sold her a Ukrainian girl's blood.
Right. So, again, Caleb and Dolores beat up this guy, take his blood. Caleb's injected with the blood so he can...
No picture ID, by the way. Like, the guy's withdrawing like $50 billion of money and like just no picture.
The fingerprint, the picture would show up on screen.
Yeah.
The fingerprint was an issue for me.
Yeah.
Why did his fingerprint change? It was just blood.
I think it was a blood draw.
It's a blood draw.
I think it was like a prick, like a.
Oh, it was a prick. I thought it was just a print.
Well, it takes like that thing takes like the blood sample. We saw.
Yeah.
That's how Liam signs it over. That's also how the first episode when Dolores confronts that man, he signs over paperwork the same way. It's like an even more encrypted way of getting that. So they're able to get all the money. And it's funny because Dolores said, like, we don't want to go to plan 2 or plan B, which is me just killing everyone here. So they ended up getting the money. They had the classic heist, like it didn't quite work right away thing. And then the blood sample works just in time before it kind of like it dilutes out of his system.
What they call it? The thing that he signs over to him, like a hitch or something. He's like, you got to sign over this hitch to me so that I can be in charge of your finance.
Shit!
They called it something. They called it something specific.
Hash,
I also don't
hash.
Yeah, a hash marker. I don't know what it was, but I think it's hash marker.
Yeah, it felt like a fake hashtag. It was
It's like hash key. It's hash key.
Hash key. Yeah,
that's what
that
it
was
is,
it. Yeah, I don't understand that guy's job because he's like he's basically his bodyguard, but also his head of all of his finances and stuff. He's like the jack of all trades. I don't understand his position.
It's an example of a guy who I bet was just security, and then he realized he's much stronger than him, and he's like, well, I can just run this fucking guy's life.
I'm just gonna beat you up and call you like a bitch and just take all your money. Great.
Okay, so let's recap just to reset. William and Charlotte, they are talking about avoiding the SERAC takeover. Delos, Bernard, and Ashley, they're going to find Liam. Caleb and Dolores, they have managed to steal Liam's money. All of it. All of the money. Not even like, let's leave a little bit. Let's leave $1 billion. All of the money. And then finally, the last grouping is SERAC and MAEVE. They start out in a dinner in Singapore, and that is they're actually there, or at least MAEVE is there. Whether SERAC is there real or not, I just never know with SERAC. I don't know what's real, what's not.
He did shoot that guy, so presumably
that is
real.
true. He did,
but he also had a line before he did that where he's discussing, I think it's heaven and hell, and he says like human people, or he says something where it's like it makes you, because at that point it's it's pretty clear he's no longer just a
hologram
guy, he's a person, but he still says something where it's like, are you a human? I forget if it's humanity or human people or humans, but he says they invented gods, and
he's very poetic about like heaven and hell and stuff.
Right. It could be a thing that makes sense as just like I could say like humanity invented God, but the way he said it, it just had like a Like it didn't feel like he was talking about himself. Or a
So
sect he was part of.
she questions like, if you really knew me, you'd take me to Paris or whatever. And then he teases something that we've seen before. We saw in the tease from last week that Paris was blown up in a nuclear attack or accident or something. I'd imagine attack. In one of the trailers of the season, there is one of those divergence rings, which we get confirmation that those divergence rings are Rehoboam, which makes sense. I think it wasn't like they're trying to hide it. It was just a good kind of nod, like, hey, this is what Rehoboam is recognizing, that these are things that are kind of out of the norm, anomalies. We did see in the preview for the season that Paris was attacked at some point in 2025, I believe. So he informs her, like, as a kid, I saw Paris was decimated. So Paris doesn't exist anymore. It's just a memory. And basically, he created Rehoboam to help avoid incidents like Paris, which this creates, again, that good and evil vibe, right? You're not sure what, like, is Dolores good? Like, there's a lot that you like that Dolores says, but a lot of it's bad. And the same thing with SERAC. You're like, well, I like that he's trying to avoid these explosions, these attacks, these disasters, but he's going about it in the wrong way. He's manipulating humanity.
Free will.
Very Ozymandias and Watchmen type thing. That's how I bring it back to Watchmen. Very Adrian Veidt.
That scene was almost kind of laugh out loud funny, because the kids were just playing, and then like these guys come up and like, hey, turn around. There's been a nuclear explosion. Like, they didn't notice a 50 megaton nuke go off. Like,
stupid kids. It's not a rain cloud.
I think there'd be like a fucking sound or something. They just didn't even notice until they turned around. It was crazy.
He says that the best map of the human mind was on Westworld. He laughs. He jokes, like, of all places, it was in a theme park. And it was uploaded to Sublime by Dolores. So Dolores is the only one who has access to it, only one who has the key to that, which we had found out in the previous episode when SERAC told that to Charlotte. And he will give Maeve a chance to reunite with his daughter. She's able to go find Dolores and bring him Dolores. And not even just Dolores. And I saw, like, the Westworld Reddit had some questions about, like, why can't SERAC find her? And they're like, it's more about, like, the line of thinking. It's more about the idea, the mind of Dolores, and just, like, going to get her and just, like, he can't just beat the shit out of Dolores. Like, that's a much more complex character than that. So he wants Maeve's help. SERAC takes Maeve to Arnold's old house, which there was a divergence where you get the confirmation that, like, divergence is a word that SERAC uses with Rehoboam. We see that Dolores has copied 5 people. 5 people have been copied, which we'll get back to, because there may be someone who's unaccounted for here. SERAC tortures and kills a man who actually helped broker the identity sale to Dolores. He puts on those glasses where he can see his potential future. He cooperates or doesn't, where his family's being tortured. And this is where you kind of get the SERAC. You're like, all right, SERAC, maybe he's not that bad, right? And then he just fucking shoots the guy. It's like, all right, this guy's evil. He's really fucked up. Shoots the guy right in the head after he gives me information. Maeve hunts down the mortician. She goes and finds a mortician who collects blood. There's all these blood bags. And she's the one, John, who you mentioned that says, yeah, I sold her the Laura Espin identity. Pretty cool scene from Maeve. Had a lot of John Wick vibes to it, right? She goes up to the bouncers, like, can I get in? No, and just beats the shit out of them. Shoots the guy in the dick. Yeah, just shoots his dick off. Then one guy in, like, the mortician area is, like, going to go, she pulls a gun at her, and she just kind of, like, no look, just shoots him right in the chest, kills him. The mortician, so she's like, all right, well, shit, now I have to help you. She brings her to a Yakuza and a man named Sato, she says. So the Yakuza and a man named Sato who kind of controls all them. That's who she reports to. And she mentioned, she's like, you don't just fucking walk in here. Like, this doesn't work like that. Like, you walk into my place. But she does, because she can control electronics. Maeve has that ability. We saw her walking in Singapore, like, all the electronics around her kind of go crazy.
She goes like, she's like Magneto.
Yeah, she is basically Magneto.
I have a theory about her, but I'm gonna get to it when we get into the questions.
Okay. All right, I like that. She used the guns turn on themselves, which, again, I like the technological advancement of being able to shoot those guns, but I feel like when they're tied to your wrist, that creates problems when a host can control them. So she basically forces them to all kill themselves. And then she goes into kind of the area where this Sato, this guy running the Yakuza, is. And she fights a guy with a sword, stabs him through a barrel, because this is a distillery they're at. They're like, it's a front for a distillery, and the barrel has white goo pour out.
It's the host cum.
It is. It's the white goo that helps create the hosts. There are hundreds and hundreds of barrels.
I feel like you shouldn't keep those in oak barrels. I feel like it should be in like a vacuum sealed something. This isn't like a whiskey you're trying to age.
When you're created, you're like, yeah, I was aged for 10 years before they made me.
You got a nice smoky barrel flavor to it.
And then it turns out, and this, okay, so here's here's a character that we didn't know was going to come back from season 2. Musashi is apparently Sato, and Musashi is from Shogun World in season 2, who Maeve had interactions with. So they do bring back an older character we haven't seen yet, and that's kind of a big reveal, but not the big reveal. The big reveal and twist starts off at this orgy masked sex party, basically. Liam arrives with his friend, who I won't say his name. I'm just going to refer to him as Lady Gaga's manager in A Star is Born.
Yeah, shithead.
He shows up again. He teases a drug. He talked about this drug called Genre, which is actually the title for the next episode. The next episode is titled Genre, so we don't learn a lot about it, but they kind of talk about how much it can manipulate and fuck with your mind, and the shit you see is crazy. It's like the
Cool name for a
ultimate
drug.
trip. So next episode's going to be pretty trippy. I think that's basically what we're going to get. Next episode's going to have some really wacky stuff, and the preview for the next episode was wild, too. I thought it was the preview for the entire season. It's for the next episode. So I think next episode's like jam-packed. Bernard and Ashley, they arrive, and they try to abduct Liam. And I did like this scene. It wasn't like crazy funny, but I like Bernard pointing the button at Liam. He's like, what the fuck? Turn off. Like, what? Why aren't you turning off? Liam's like, what are you doing? Like, stop
Like Adam
clicking this button.
Sandler and
And
Adam
they
Sandler and
find
Click.
out that Liam is not the host. And they're like, oh, shit. She did it to someone else. Dolores and Caleb then intercept Liam. And Dolores has kind of basically a very quick fight with Ashley. It's again why you kind of like Ashley. He's like, look, he's like, I don't hate you. I'm only fighting you because this motherfucker came back. And my directive is I always have to protect Bernard. And he's really just in her way. Like, she has no hard feelings against him either. And she beats the shit out of him, and he falls over the ledge. We don't see in the rest of the episode. I don't think he's dead or anything. I think Ashley's alive. I think that's...
No,
It's too
you don't
dense.
see him die, he can't be dead.
Yeah.
He's too dense. The
And we
dude's like
like
a
Ashley
beach ball.
too
He just
much.
like bounced right back off the ground.
Yeah. And then, this is kind of cool. She walks by Liam's friend, the guy who we met in the first episode, who's like, maybe we're in a simulation within a simulation. And she points to her head like this, and he's shocked because he thinks Dolores, he knows her as Laura, but he thinks Dolores is dead. Like, Liam's girlfriend is dead. And she pointed to her brain in the first episode. She said, this part of your brain, this very small, like 1.5 inch part of your brain, is the part of your brain that allows you to believe in God. And in that episode, the friend said, I'm an atheist, right?
Mhm.
And so she's kind of implying, like, oh, you believe in God now? Like, I'm a fucking God. I did not. You thought I was dead, I'm back, bitch. Like, and she walks downstairs, which I thought was a really cool nod. It's like, again, Dolores, like, do you really want to root for Dolores? But she's kind of badass in that respect, where she knows she's manipulating people, and she kind of has control over the world at this point.
Also beat the shit out of Stubbs. Stubbs, like,
did.
really just a useless dude.
Well, he also
I love
mentioned
him, but-
he hurt his shoulder, and so, which, you know, I always do appreciate when they allude to something early on, where he's like, I can't do much, and
Right.
because like quick fights are always tough, no matter who's beating up who. You're like, it's a quick fight, but kind of makes sense. He wasn't really mobile. Caleb finds Bernard, who has Liam, and Bernard, again, very confused, trying to figure things out. Bernard asks Caleb, like, what are you? Are you human? Are you a host?
Does
He's like,
Caleb understand yet what
No.
Dolores is?
No.
See,
no.
that's what I didn't think so. But
No.
she so obviously says it when they walk into that party, where she's like, I thought your world was going to be different than mine, but it's the same thing. As Caleb, as someone who's like hyper aware of robots and things like that, that should be a pretty fucking telltale line where he's questioning before he meets Dolores. He's always questioning, is this a robot? Is this not a robot? You know, he had the phone call with the Rehoboam people.
Are you human?
And if she just outright says, I thought your world would be different than mine, turns out it's the same. That
Well,
should be an alarm going off. In
Yeah, I
Caleb's head.
think maybe he doesn't know, but maybe he thinks she's from a different. I don't know. That's a good point. He should. He's just an idiot, apparently.
I think he's
Maybe
just a simp.
Maybe he didn't deserve those fucking jobs. He's just stupid. I don't know.
Mhm.
She finds out. She's like, "Man, you're an idiot. Like, it wasn't Rehoboam. You just really are dumb."
Something I was curious
like,
about.
I outright explicitly told you that I am not from this world, and you just didn't even miss a beat.
It's like what do you call when Terry Crews finds out that they're what do you call Marlon Wayans isn't white at the end of White Chicks?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, you
You've
never
seen
saw
White
White
Chicks?
Chicks?
No,
Jesus
is it
Christ,
good?
John.
Surprising. It's a
Alright,
movie I
so-
feel like you would have seen.
I feel like it's definitely a movie you would have seen. I'm not saying it's good or anything, but I feel like it's one that you would have
That
seen
feels
before.
insulting to me.
That's
I'm not saying it's good. Just something you like.
Our breakdown of White Chicks will be next week. Yeah. So anyway, Caleb clearly doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's like, I don't know, man. It's like, which I feel like at that moment, Caleb's like, what am I doing? Like,
Right.
this is insanity. And then Martin arrives, and Martin holds up Bernard, and
So
this is
cool.
where it kind of kicks into high gear. And at the same time, I love the way they edited this episode. I thought it was fucking cool. I was like, I kind of like the blood race. And I was like, oh shit, we're about to find out. And I thought we just find out Charlotte. We're like, oh my God, we're going to find out all these people at once. And we find out that Charlotte, Martin, Musashi are all just Dolores. They're more Dolores. What's the plural of, is it Dolori?
Dolori.
I've seen that. The Westworld Reddit and Twitter said Dolori. So they're all Dolori. She copied herself because I think she said something like, just, if you need it done, just have yourself do it, right? Yeah. You're the best person to get the job done. So they're all just Dolores, and they have their own ways of revealing it. They're like an old friend, or I'm your oldest friend. I know you down to your bones. That's what the Charlotte Dolores says to Man in Black. Martin Dolores says, I'm your oldest friend to Bernard. So kind of just some crazy shit. And that's the big reveal, which we kind of thought Charlotte was potentially Dolores, but not that they were all Dolores. Do you like the twist? I thought it was a really cool twist. I like the idea, and it makes sense.
I honestly, there was what was it? When I forget if it was at that standoff, but they start listing the people that Dolores didn't treat well, or I forget exactly.
Yeah, she says, I know one of them is Hector, one of them's Clementine. She mentions that.
Right. When I heard Clementine, I was like, fuck yes, I'm right. Mm-hmm. Charlotte is Clementine. And was that in this standoff? When was that?
I forget what moment that happened in. But no, I thought of the same thing too. I was like, uh-oh, is that her? But then the way they explained it, I'm like, oh, they're saying that no, that's not who it is. It's someone different. Yeah. But no, it did happen at one point in the episode.
But no, I liked it. I'm very in. I prefer this to anything else, I think.
Yeah, no, me too. I think it's a pretty awesome twist, and definitely one that I didn't particularly see coming at all, which is kind of crazy.
Well,
it feels like it's so obvious, right?
Yeah, you look back and you're like, oh, it was, but I think those are the best twists, right? Where it was, well, because we talked about it last week, you don't want a twist that you have to explain, where you're like, oh, and then you're like, I got to go back and watch season 2, episode 3 for this 30-second scene that it makes complete sense. It's not crazy to conceptualize in your head how this happened and why she do it, but it's still kind of a shocking twist. So they all have
that it makes even more sense, right? Because every single person that's been on her team has failed her. You think of Teddy, he killed himself. You think of Clementine, she got turned into a weapon that got used against him. Everyone that hasn't been her on her side has failed her completely.
Yeah. Again, can only really trust herself. So we no, go ahead.
I have a question with her trusting herself. Why bring back Bernard?
That is a question.
We're gonna find
out. That's one we're gonna get to.
We have that question. Yeah, we have that question. So wrapping this up, they all have their certain things. The Martin one isn't as crazy because Martin's just get in the fucking car, Bernard. They go off. Dolores reveals herself to Liam, who Caleb captures. Liam and Caleb don't know how to run, I don't think, by the way. It's one of the most unathletic chases I've ever seen. They finally capture him, though, and Liam's like, what the fuck? You're alive? So we'll get back to them. I'm sure next episode, it seems like we mostly focus on them. The Musashi Dolores, excuse me. So Musashi's actually Dolores, kills MAEVE. Yeah. Kills MAEVE, stabs her pretty brutally. But as she's bleeding out, she isn't Dolores, the Musashi Dolores, isn't able to retrieve the pearl. If you know, she's about to cut open the back of MAEVE's head, and then the Yakuza come in and they're like, we got to get you out of here, Sato, because they still don't know that this is not Sato, their boss. It's Dolores inside another body. And he's like, oh, shit. So he's got to keep up this ruse and this whole charade he's had. So he doesn't retrieve the pearl, which is basically, they may as well put up a pop-up MAEVE is alive. She's still good. And also, as she's bleeding, I think you go compare, they've seen blood and milk and stuff in past seasons, but also the red of the blood and the white kind of goo of the host creation stuff, it mixes and it kind of has that reddish look, which the intro and the logo of the season is also red. So we may have something there as well. And then finally, William is the last thing. William goes pretty crazy after the reveal because he's already questioning reality. And he's like, holy shit. And he basically tries to attack the Charlotte Dolores. And she uses it against him, manipulates him. And she's like, these aren't board members. These aren't anywhere from Delos. These are people who work for mental health. They're mental health contractors or whatever. I contracted them out. They're going to take you away. You're not okay. You're unfit for the board seat. And now your shares and everything transfers to the acting president. So now we have control. So the whole thing with Charlotte and William, or the Charlotte Dolores rather, now that we know it's Dolores, was to manipulate him and take away his board seat. She never wanted him. She never wanted him to become Vote. She wanted to prove he was crazy. She had complete and total control of the company as SERAC tries and takes them over. As she leans in, she injects him with something. She either injects him or takes a blood sample. I don't know what she does, but she does a little prick and there's a little bit of blood.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're supposed to know which way it was, whether it was an injection or a
My gut went inject, but yeah, now that you mention it, I guess we don't know which.
I would say inject as well. That'd be my gut.
Maybe DNA. Who knows?
Yeah, it's true. And then in the end, he's in a mental institute, back in white. He's now the man in white again, not the man in black anymore. And he asks her, she's like, ask the question. And he goes, am I me? And that's the very Inception-y thing, by the way, that reminds me of like the Cobb. Like, does he know if he's in a dream or not? He needs a totem. He needs to know where he is. We don't get an answer on that. And she leans in and says, welcome to the end game. Which people have noted is kind of a throwback to previous seasons as well, things that have been said. And it kind of turns it on its head because before it was the host trying to gain consciousness to become human, and now it's the humans questioning reality and if they are human. It flips everything. And it was a very cool cliffhanger ending with a cool tease. Anything else quick before we get into questions? We do have a lot of kind of little things to get to.
I have two theories that I'm curious.
Okay.
What do you guys have to think about them? The first of which is I'm just kind of curious about the war because this war has been alluded to a lot. And I'm assuming this is involved with the nuke somehow. Do you think it's possible that somehow Caleb was cryo frozen? And like me, because they always talk about this, like when people get injured or they have something that they can't treat yet, they cryo freeze them and they fix them later. Do you think it's possible that he was cryo frozen and Kid Cudi didn't die? He died of old age. And maybe just that explains what's off with the mom because we still have no idea what's off with the mom yet.
That could be I could see that because that diner was really old. I think like when you see the flashbacks to Kid Cudi and Caleb, they have like regular like masks, like they're in the present day.
Mm-hmm.
I could see him being from the very deep past.
Yeah, and I think maybe they stopped motion him and fixed him, and then they had to like bring him back out in the future. And he's just like stuck in this reality now that he doesn't want to be in because it feels like he's so unacclimated to this present day, like a crazy amount unacclimated to it, and like everything that's going on.
Yeah, he's like a guy who's like
drama.
He's like I'm bad at tech. I'm bad at texting. I don't know technology too well. He's got that vibe to him. I like that. I did not think about it. It's a very good theory. I'd be very on board with that.
That had not crossed my mind at all, but I love it.
Because a lot of
anyone else would slowly have like gotten how technology. He is taken aback by absolutely everything.
Exactly. Again, I think
maybe that would explain his stupidity with like another world. Like he doesn't even know what the fuck Westworld is. Like he just thinks she's being intentionally vague rather than being like, no, I'm from a different world than you.
Well, that would, again, a lot of the flashbacks look really old, right? They don't look like the flashbacks where you're like, oh, it's like the flashback with SERAC where it's 2025 or it's wherever. It's still in the future where his flashbacks look like a while ago. It's a good one. What's the other theory?
He might even be older than him. So the one thing that I immediately thought of when the twist with Dolores happened, I'm like, oh, so she's Agent Smith from The Matrix. And the more I thought about it, there's a lot of parallels to The Matrix, and I'm going to list them off right now. So Dolores, obviously Agent Smith, she despises humanity and she's replicating herself into this, like self-replicating herself into this cancer that eradicates humanity. Caleb, I think in this case is Cypher. You know, he's the simp. He's Joe Pantoliano. He's the simp that's helping Agent Smith because he thinks that he's like cheated by the order of the things around him. And SERAC is the architect from that because he's so obsessed with this algorithm that keeps everything in order. And like he wants to make sure everything's going to the plan no matter what. And then Maeve, I think, is functionally Neo because she can manipulate everything around her. You know what I mean? With like the electronics and all that shit. Like when those guys are trying to fight her, she hacks into her guns and makes them turn on each other. Like that's something like you'd see Neo do 1,000 times in every movie. But she's also, I think, from personality aspect, more like Morpheus because she has this singular desire, right? Where like Morpheus, it was all I want to do is find the one. All I want to do is find the one. And with her, it's all I want to do is find my daughter. All I want to do is find my daughter.
Yeah.
Very, very singular. And Bernard is the Oracle because at the end of the day, the only thing he wants is a peaceful coexistence between humans and machines. That's the only thing he wants. That's the same thing the Oracle wanted in the Matrix. So everything is starting to line up for me very, very similarly now to the Matrix.
Which may even line up more if they unplug and we learn we're in a simulation. So that very well.
I mean, I haven't seen all the Matrixes, but that explanation worked well for me.
I'm putting that out there.
I mean, it makes complete sense. All those line up.
Let us know.
Interesting. I have not thought about that. Okay, I like that. Other questions and theories. This one is from me. Do you think Dolores is actually Dolores?
I do.
Like Dolores Weezy, do you think that is Dolores? Because there's also, keep in mind, I believe if you look at it carefully, there is an unaccounted for Pearl. There was Bernard, there's her when she came over from Westworld, and then there's 5 hosts, and we've met Musashi, we've met Martin, we've met Charlotte. So I think we're missing one, I believe. But do you think Dolores is the other host?
I mean, you brought this up last night. You texted me this last night, and I hadn't considered that Dolores wasn't Dolores. Just because if Dolores isn't Dolores, then the line, if you want something done right, do it yourself, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, which my only thing is I keep thinking back to that hotel scene where it just acted like they were 2 different people. But I don't know. I may just be overthinking that. That may not even be the case at all.
Yourself now
There's definitely another big reveal with something with a host with a Pearl. We just haven't found it yet. And I think we'll probably get a tease to what that. I think the big question will be set up in the next one, right? Like we have some unanswered questions now, but like the next big thing, we're going to kind of get teased in the next one. This comes from @Markham Cody. Are SERAC and Ford the same? Are they brothers? A lot of people have said that. They're both from Europe, though Ford is not French.
British.
Yeah,
British.
But they may have some sort of relation.
They showed the brother during that scene with the flashback.
I think Ford having a tie to SERAC makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how that connection is. I think it's a good question. And it looks like we get a lot more of the youth of SERAC in the next episode.
They so intentionally showed the other kid in that flashback on the bikes. So I feel like that might be, I think that holds water.
It's got to mean something. From @Mr. L. Senberg, do you view Dolores as the protagonist or antagonist? Which we've kind of touched on this already. And actually someone replied to that tweet and they said the only answer here is yes. That's what I think is what it is. I think the beauty of the show right now is every person is either good or bad depending on how you view it. There is no very clear line. I think Caleb maybe to an extent is good, but at the same time, like
betraying humanity.
Right?
He's not even like, I wouldn't say he's good. I'd say he's gullible. Like he's just kind of, he's easily swayed. He's just like, you point him in a direction, that's the way he goes. I don't think like he doesn't have good intentions.
Yeah.
So I think everyone in this show, like you might consider good or bad, they're all pragmatic. Like that's their thing is like, oh, well, of course I'd want everything to be good, but I'm pragmatic. Like SERAC is pragmatic because he wants the algorithm to just predetermine everything. Dolores doesn't think that it's possible for humans and hosts to live symbiotically. So her pragmatic solution is just eradicate humans. I think Bernard is the one guy here who is the good guy. Because he isn't pragmatic, he's optimistic. He thinks that there is a possibility for humans and hosts to live symbiotically and to fix things without like constant bloodshed.
Yep. No, I'd agree completely. Yeah, the towing of the line is what makes, again, I think this so fucking intriguing this season. Another question about the season in general @Z__tree says, is this season just one big simulation? And if that was the case, you remember in Men in Black or whatever, whichever the one where they zoomed out and the world was just marbles?
Yeah.
And you're like if they have that moment where they unplug and it's just like all a dream or whatever, like would that piss you off? I'd
hate that.
I would be so pissed.
That would be absolute bullshit.
I'm okay if like not next episode, but for episode 6, it's a simulation. You're like, what the fuck? And then the last 2.5 episodes, it turns. Like I'm cool with that. But if the last thing was that, I'd buy this DVD set just to burn it. I'd be like,
I don't agree
with that 100%.
I like it if it's episode 6 and there's more explanation. We're dealing with enough like storylines and things like that. If you zoom out and it's just all fake, I will not be pleased.
So I think one of the coolest twists from Inception was that opening one where they zoom out of the first dream and they're like, oh, we're actually in a second dream. And like, that's really fucking cool to me. But I think that I don't know at this point, like this late, if it would work the same way. But I agree with you. If they were going to do it, then to do it now.
I think if we have
later.
If we have a moment like that, I think it's going to be tied to William because we still have that post-credit scene from season 2, the last episode of season 2, where he's in the distant future. It looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I think that may tie in a little bit. I don't know where, but I think we may get a thing like that. But if the whole big thing at the end is a simulation, I'll punch my screen. @JD Treat 2, he's been tweeting us this last couple weeks and very much so this week. Ramin Djawadi, I believe that's how you say his name, who does the music for this show. Amazing job this episode. And he had an orchestral cover of Wicked Games by The Weeknd. And that's what they played during that orgy masked party. Sounded amazing. That whole scene and that song and playing like an orchestra version of The Weeknd fucking killed it. The music is so good in this show.
I didn't know that was The Weeknd. I'm guessing that's from his new album, maybe. But
Which, subtitles, they said The Weeknd. That's the only reason I knew that. I didn't realize.
Oh, really?
Now playing, or said music, Wicked Games by The Weeknd. I was like, oh shit, that's very cool.
I knew. I had a feeling it was something special though, because how much focus was put on the orchestra. Like, there were like 4 shots of the orchestra during that party, and it was dope with the masks and everything. It was very sick. But yeah,
the geisha mask. It was really weird. It was interesting.
I'll tell you what, it's how much music plays into some of these shows that HBO does. And again, I'll bring up Watchmen. When they had, remember when they did Careless Whisper, an entire episode, just different versions of it?
Different ways every time. It was so sick.
And apparently, you want to talk about music, Ramin Djawadi's been amazing all season with music. Apparently, in the first episode, a user on Reddit, user CJ Sullivan, said the same score was used for Dolores, Martin, and Charlotte in that episode. So he's like, I went back, or he or she looked back and was like, oh my God, they were just telling us right then and there it's the same person, which I love that. I always love that.
So awesome.
That's like,
God, that's sick.
That's the best shit every time. When you can go back and you hear like a musical, like a music piece or like something in the background where it's like, it's episode 1. We're telling you the twist right now that you're not going to find out from 3 or 4 episodes. That's the best.
Yeah.
That's the best every time.
That's what the Taylor Swift does stuff like that. When like she's promoting one album, she'll be like have some little thing on her that like comes up in the next album, and you could never ever put it together. Like you'd have to be a freak to put it together. But once you see it, God damn, it's so awesome. And that music right there fits the same.
One of the other teases too in this episode that happened that kind of gave you the reveal early was the shaving as well. And this comes from on Twitter. The handle is @SweetMaxif. Dolores used to shave the Man in Black. We've seen her shave the Man in Black with a straight razor. And Charlotte, who we then find out is Dolores, was shaving the Man in Black, William, in this episode, which again, it's right there. They're like, here you go. They're like, oh, we're confusing? We told you a half hour ago. It's like one of those things. It's like, you just love when like a good tease reveal, just so you can go back and watch it. Like, it's awesome. Again, they've been fucking nailing the season. User on the Westworld Reddit, --Z-man --. I love not reading these until after I write them, until we're live, because I just sound like an idiot when I read these names. Is Dolores planning on mass-producing hosts? I think we've also kind of touched on this as well, but I want to head back to this one. With all those barrels, that's got to be what she's doing, right?
Yeah.
Creating a world of just hosts. Or
an army.
An army, yeah. An army of hosts. I hope it's all Ashleys. It's a bunch of healthy Ashleys without the arm issue.
Yeah, I think it's going to end up fucking up her brain, having copied herself that many times. Do you remember how they always mention, I think in Clone Wars, where they're like, yeah, the Jango Fett DNA samples degrades the more you use it. I think the more copies she makes of her original brain, the more it's going to fuck up her actual brain.
Yeah, and I don't know like the movie Future World at all, and like the story of Future World, the sequel to Westworld, but I have seen in plenty of breakdowns and people talk about this show that like Future World, it is replacing people with hosts anyway. So I think that's basically what we're seeing here. User Jimmy O. Wait, did I already say that one? This is Jimmy Olsen Blues. Fuck.
Jimmy O Yang. Good friend.
Silicon Valley actor Jimmy O Yang asks, what is the final count on the pearls and identities? So we also went back to this one. So what we know Bernard is the red pearl, right? The red and black pearl. We have Musashi, we have Martin, and we have Charlotte. That's 4. And on that screen that SERAC showed Charlotte, on the screen that SERAC showed Maeve, there were 5. So we're missing one because one of them is not Dolores. So we're missing one copied or created body. So we're missing a host. Someone's a host that we don't know right now. I don't have any guesses though.
I can't even begin to think of one.
No guesses.
Maybe it's Caleb. I don't know. Maybe it's Marshawn Lynch. I don't know. That'd be funny.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I was told that man was going to be an important role in this show.
Did you watch the preview for
next
episode?
He's in the preview thing. He was in the preview.
All right.
User George _Costanza. I feel like Dolores has a bigger plan for Bernard. So this comes back to what you were asking earlier, John, is what is the point of Bernard? She copied all of herself, but she has Bernard. And this person got some replies on the Reddit as well for Westworld saying they're like, She's very smart, though, and may think, like you said, KenJac, she knows that it may fuck with her brain. She needs a bit of balance, or she needs someone to keep her in check or keep her in line, and she's able to kind of control the elements of it, which we do see Martin is taken by Martin takes Bernard. So maybe that is part of the plan. Like, now Bernard has set a lot of these things in motion and gotten to her where she needs to be, because it's all kind of fallen in place for her pretty perfectly. And now Martin has Bernard. Maybe Martin helps convince Bernard to join that side of the fight. I don't know.
Yeah, it just seems unnecessary. It seems weird to bring an opponent when you could just not have an opponent.
Yeah, so there's definitely bigger plans for Bernard. Like, it's not just there to be like, because I'm bored and I need someone to fight me.
Especially when he has the sickle mode button.
Yeah.
Potentially going to try and foil my plan all the time.
Maybe he's building those. Maybe she knows he's going to build those buttons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe those
She don't know if she has the ingenuity to build those. Although she is actually very smart in the real world. Who knows?
Which Martin has one of those buttons now. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe that could be it. Vanity Fair pointed this one out. The Itashoshin Distillery. I'm not saying that right, but that translates to be of the same mind, even though we are many in body. And that's the name of the distillery that
one word means that.
Yeah, so it's Itadashin Distillery. Itadashin means to be of the same mind, even though we are many in body. Yeah, so that is what the whole plant is called, where the Musashi Dolores is, with all those different barrels of the goo. So that's a pretty cool Easter egg, pretty cool tease there. And then final thoughts and what's next. Preview for the next episode, we see young SERAC. We see maybe like a teenage
Sounds like
SERAC.
the world's worst rap name.
Young SERAC. We see maybe like a teenage SERAC as well. We are going to learn more about the Paris thing. Caleb is back with Lena Waithe and Marshawn Lynch. So we do see them back together at some point. Bernard is with Martin. Liam injects himself with something. I'd imagine it's that genre drug. He's with Caleb, and there are tons of car chases and fights. The whole preview is car chases, fights, and a little bit of Williams. So, again, I thought that was a preview for the rest of the, they do like coming up the rest of the season, but HBO labeled it as season 3, episode 5 preview. So the next episode looks like it's fucking action packed, and I'll end with this. Couldn't ask for more. I am amped for the next episode. I'm loving this.
Yeah, I think it's not what I expected. I didn't have expectations going into the season.
Me neither.
But it's been so good that I mentioned I bailed on season 2, and I just read recaps for this. It's been so good, it makes me want to go back and watch a season that it's almost like stamped universally badass season
by them.
Well, maybe I'll go back and check it out.
Like they basically reworked their show because they realized we may have gone too far in some spots. Which what we it's been talked about before for many things: Game of Thrones, Star Wars. The Sonic the Hedgehog redesign. Like, how far do you go to please people watching? Because how often do people actually know what is good or what they want? Think about how many projects are called bad and then age well and are considered hilarious or great. But I do think there are moments where you're like, all right, maybe we should listen to feedback. Like, these people loved what we did at first. We went even deeper the next time, and people didn't like it as much. Like, we can find a way to dial. We've had the perfect formula. I think that's the big thing. We've had that formula. Let's find a way to use that formula but still make something a bit new. And I think they've done, look in our eye, I think they've done a really good job here. It's
for sure. Absolutely.
Look forward to next week.
Yeah, me too. Should be think of the most exciting episode of the season so far.
Yeah, I think these last 4 episodes are going to be, I think, fucking all out, just wall insanity. Because I think they're going to reach, I guess, the end game, right? That Dolores teases to Williams. So I'm pumped. I got no complaints. I'm loving this. I can't say it enough for people who haven't watched. If you're just watching this to get our thoughts, we've had a lot of people tweet at us let's hear what you say 4 episodes in, and then maybe I'll watch.
Hey man,
we're 4 episodes in.
Get on board. Train is officially leaving the station. I keep forgetting. It's 7 or 8 episodes.
8.
8. Okay.
8, which is nice. We got 4 more.
Yeah.
So again, if you're looking for our review after the 4th episode for how we feel about the season, watch it.
I don't think I haven't had an episode below, I think probably a B or a B+ yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not too much down.
Westworld keeping us happy. Let's see if they do it the next 4 episodes. We'll have a full review of episodes 5 next week. Let us know in the comment section below any theories you have. Who is SERAC? What are your thoughts on SERAC? What's the next big tease? Who is the other host out there? Give us anything you think. We'll look at it, maybe throw some in next week. Also hit the subscribe button and the like button, a big help to us. For KenJac and John, I'm Jeff Lowe. We will talk to you next Monday.